For many of us, living or working in the countryside is an absolute joy, but country living isn't without its issues, one of which is having slow or non-existent broadband services. This is the story of the Vale of Mowbray Community Broadband Project, and one woman's transformation from caravan park owner to being Community Broadband Champion.
Carol Bowe and her husband Keith own Otterington Park caravan site near Northallerton in North Yorkshire. Their facilities include camping pods, tour vans and static units. One of the attractions for Carol's guests is free Wi-Fi internet connection. Carol explains how in the summer of 2010 her broadband signal spiralled into near-terminal decline.
Basically, about last August it suddenly went into a decline from, we had maybe 1.3 megabits speed, and it just went right down to 0.05. And I was sitting waiting half an hour for emails to open if they had an attachment with them. If I wanted to send an attachment, that took another half an hour, by which time the server had timed out and I had to start again.
And what sort of problems would small businesses face if they didn't have an adequate internet connection?
Well, some of them just couldn't function. I mean, you know, there was a customer in Newby Whisk who is an archaeologist and needed to send and receive large maps, and he either had to go down to the library to download them, or a friend in Thirsk did and put them onto a memory stick for him, and then he had to bring them home to put on his computer. So it's opened up a whole new world to him since he's got the new connection.
So not having adequate internet speed or broadband speed could literally mean that you couldn't run your own business if you were living in a rural area.
Well, yes, and there's been a number of people who were struggling.
This map depicts the town of Northallerton and its surrounding areas. The light pink circles show areas where broadband speed is relatively quick, but you don't have to go very far from the town centre before you reach dark red spots. These dots indicate very poor speeds, or areas where broadband isn't available at all, so-called broadband not spots. As with so many of us living in rural areas, Carol's problem is predominantly one of geography, in that the further you're home from the telephone exchange, the more the broadband signal degrades and the slower your service. So what were Carol's options for a possible solution?
Find about satellite, because we're members of the Country Landowners Association, and they were doing a scheme where they were trying to help people in rural areas get broadband, and so they had an arrangement with a satellite company where members got 10% discount.
Whilst Carol awaited further information from the satellite company, she read about a community broadband project which had been set up by Ninet. Ninet is owned by North Yorkshire County Council and is a public-private partnership which aims, through high-speed fibre optic cables installed throughout the county, to provide high-quality and high-speed internet services to rural areas. Unfortunately, Ninet is unable to provide services to private individuals, so Carol required an intermediary, and she found this in the form of Nick Hall and Clanet. Carol needed 50 expressions of interest before a new project could be considered, so she wrote to some 400 locals and promptly received 50 replies. The next step was to hold a public meeting, lobby the local MP, approach parish councils, and pin flyers on parish notice boards. Towards the end of 2010, the breakthrough came when Carol and Nick were able to tack onto a scheme already supported by the Rural Development Programme for England, delivering high-speed wireless broadband to the nearby village of Appleton Wisk, making a much larger project and enabling our network to get off the ground. Returning to our original not-spot map, this new plan shows our area of potential coverage. But how does the system work? The broadband signal is beamed from a public building such as a school, into which Ninet's fibre optics terminate. From here, a network of pole-mounted receivers and transmitters links buildings which have direct line of sight with one another. Mostly these devices are installed at rooftop level, but in some cases this is not possible. Here, for example, Nick Hall places units in a garden. On the satellite map we can see how the signal, originating on the bottom left of the screen, is beamed around various properties in the village of South Otterington. From there it makes its way to the northeast, where a farm situated on a hilltop sends the signal back in a southeasterly direction. This avoids obstacles such as trees, which physically block the radio signal. In a more close-up view, you can see how the signal is bounced from one property to another. Incredibly, even over distances of several miles, there is no degradation in signal quality, so, unlike traditional broadband delivered down telephone lines, speeds are the same at the start of the line as they are at the end. So what sort of broadband speeds are available now?
At the moment, an average of about 8.7.
Yeah.
And that's without the school having been upgraded yet. We're still using just the surplus capacity at the school.
Yeah. And when the school's upgraded, we could be reaching
20 megabits.
Which would be astounding.
Upload and download speed.
Yes, and that's the thing about this broadband, isn't it? That unlike ordinary conventional broadband, it's a symmetrical system. So the upload and download speeds are relatively similar, aren't they?
So, having started from nothing and still being in the installation phase, we now have a high-speed broadband signal travelling a total distance of over 29 kilometres and serving more than 50 customers. And that's how, even without superhuman powers or multiple heads, you become a broadband champion.